Hi, Paul Gerard from Price Accounting Services back again with another one of our videos in this channel concerning self-managed super. This video is about borrowing in a self-managed super fund. In our prior video, which dealt with limits of SMSFs and key rules, we touched on borrowing issues, but this one's a little bit more specific. So, borrowing. Now, a self-managed super fund is generally prohibited from borrowing money, okay? And we touched on that in the earlier video. However, where the conditions of the limited recourse exception, which is contained in the Superannuation Industry Supervision Industry Act 1993, then the borrowing might be accepted where a limited recourse facility is used. Now, what does that mean? Okay. Think of it this way. The SMSF will contract for a trustee company, which is a custodian of a bare trust. So you've got to set up another company, and then eventually a legal deed is created for that trust. And the terms of it basically say that the trustee, the custodian trustee, will hold the legal title to the property on bare trust until such time as the loan is extinguished and the debt is discharged. At that time, the SMSF has recourse to ask for its property to be transferred, the legal title to be transferred to the SMSF trustee. And State Duties Acts exempt that from further stamp duty because the bare trust is in essence the SMSF owning a right to the future title, if we want to simplify it to that sort of terminology. Limitations for a non-recourse borrowing facility often come down to the borrowing itself. So once upon a time, the big four banks and all the other major lenders were all interested in SMSF lending. They've all pulled out of the market, okay? The SMSF lending market is now a number of fringe players, some large, the likes of Pepper Money, etc., who will still lend to an SMSF, but are very strict in terms of loan to valuation ratio and how the debt's going to be serviced. Now, here's a word of warning for a borrowing. What a lender allows and what the fund should do are completely different things. Now, I'm going to sort of put a hat on here and talk from a investment perspective rather than a tax perspective, okay? So I want to caution you about leverage in a self-managed super fund. Many investors think if you borrow money to buy a property, it's a great thing, right? We see a lot of people do it, okay? When it comes to a self-managed super fund, that view is wrong. The reason it is wrong is the tax rate in super is 15 cents in a dollar and potentially even 0 cents in a dollar later on once it gets to retirement phase. So the low tax rate means the benefits of negative gearing aren't the same. There's no great tax savings to be had. Instead, what happens if you have a fund with a high leverage on an asset, you may find that the cash flows from the property, the rent, the outgoings, etc., and the interest create negative cash flows. Now, negative cash flows are bad for a self-managed super fund because it means you've got to then have other assets producing income to sustain the property asset, or you're going to have contributions flowing into the fund that are being consumed. So I like to use the adage of it's like throwing bundles of money into a fire to keep warm. It's expensive, okay? And you're not going to get that warm. So care has to be taken that the right leverage point is reached so that the fund isn't consuming itself to pay off a debt. Because it'll end up just receiving contributions and it's still got the same asset. It's not going anywhere. So whilst a lender might say, oh, we do loans with an 80% loan to valuation ratio, it's more common to try and look at what is a loan to valuation ratio that actually produces neutral cash flows for my fund. Okay, better way to look at it. That said, some self-managed super funds that have got a lot of income can get some marginal benefits from negative gearing, but remember, it's 15 cents in the dollar. It's not 45, it's not 30, 40, it's 15 cents in the dollar. So it's not a great earner, okay? We do get a lot of questions about that, and we're always happy to steer you in the right direction. We've even got a property estimation tool where you can fiddle with the borrowing leverage to try and identify a theoretical sweet spot if you're considering buying a property. So we're always happy to guide that. The other issue with borrowing in a self-managed super fund is a lender will require a liquidity buffer. So what do I mean by that? Okay. So let's say you've got a couple $100,000 in your self-managed super fund, 200 grand. Okay. First of all, you're going to have to still have a certain proportion of liquidity in the fund after all purchasing is done. Okay. Then the fund will need to meet the costs of the formation of the SMSF, the cost of the bare trust, etc., the custodian company. It's going to need to pay valuation fees, lender solicitors fees. Those costs can amount to many thousands of dollars, several $1,000s. And on top, and it's got to come out of cash. Not only that, the fund has to have its own stamp duty, legals, and deposit, which might be, talking earlier about lower loan to valuation ratios, it could be 35% deposit plus stamp duty and so on. So out of, let's say, your 200,000, if you're going to need to have, say, 40% to contribute to the purchase, the other 60% you're going to borrow means you're probably looking at a property under $400,000. What sort of property is reasonable purchase for under $400,000 in Australia these days? I don't know. So there's some of the factors to consider, is just modelling what the fund can afford. If you're interested in that, I sometimes suggest the good start point can be not getting set on a loan to valuation ratio now, but discussing the lending issues with a broker. Then once you've got that number in mind, come back and we're happy to discuss the merits of looking at your self-managed super fund idea. And we've also got some other strategies. So we've got some other strategies that can use partial SMSF, partial non-SMSF ownership. So for example, where mum or dad could even be a partial owner of the property prior to the SMSF acquiring a bit more over time. Loads of strategies in the world of super. So I hope that's sort of tried to explain borrowing in a self-managed super fund. One other thing, you can expect a high rate of interest, 5% plus. SMSF loans are pretty pricey in terms of rate, okay? So anyhow, your broker can sort that one out. So I hope that's helped you, and if you've got any questions, do reach out, and otherwise, I hope you enjoy another one of the videos in our SMSF channel, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers, bye.